talk about the Michigan shooting. Yeah, so let's talk about that one, shall we? Let's see here. So, at Michigan State, there's a freaking bug flying around in here. At Michigan State, a gunman shot and killed 3 students and injured 5 others on the campus of Michigan State University Monday night before fatally shooting himself, police said. Ariel Anderson, a junior from Grosse Pointe, Michigan, Brian Fraser, a sophomore, also from Grosse Pointe, and Alexandria Werner, a junior from Clawson, Michigan, were killed inside school buildings, police said Tuesday. 5 students remain hospitalized in critical condition as of Tuesday morning. The suspect, a 43-year-old man named Anthony Dwayne McRae, was found dead off the campus in East Lansing, Michigan, from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Investigations are ongoing, and as of Tuesday morning, police have absolutely no idea about a motive. Chris Rosman, the intern deputy chief of the MSU police. Suspect left a note threatening two public schools in New Jersey. Police say the suspect was believed to be acting alone and is not affiliated with the university, Rosman said. Police executed a search warrant on the suspect's residence early Tuesday morning. The gunman initially fled the scene on foot. Law enforcement located McRae roughly 3 hours later using a tip from a local resident. He appeared to have shot himself after being confronted by local law enforcement officers. On Tuesday morning, the police in Ewing, New Jersey, issued a statement that investigators had discovered a note in McRae's pocket containing a threat of 2 Ewing public schools. I hope I'm saying that right. MSU police later confirmed that they found a note on the suspect but declined to share what it contained. So this guy was in Michigan and he had threats for New Jersey schools, and he is entirely unclear why he did it. The only thing that we know about the shooting is that he had apparently planned on doing other things, but didn't get around to it, thankfully. But it came out later that the killer was previously charged with a felony, but was still able to buy guns, right? And this is a big thing that I harp on, that I think is super important, as that we as a society are really poor at. I do think that people should be allowed to have guns. I think that enshrining it in the Constitution is a prudent yet very unlikely needed safeguard against a military invasion. We've seen how effective an armed population can be at warding off a military. Just look at what happened in Ukraine, right? But you don't need every single person in the country armed. You just need a proficient, general population-wide use of guns, right? So I think that, and it's also mentioned in the Constitution, a well-regulated militia. They knew that when they wrote the Second Amendment, right? So I think that people who have felonies or any questionable mental ability, maybe they're emotionally unstable, any possible thing that can make you dangerous with something that causes death immediately, very easily, you should not be allowed to have that. And yet we keep letting people like this get weapons. And yes, if he's really determined, he's going to figure out a way to get guns. There's a lot of guns in the United States that you can pick up on the non-official gun markets, right? You can do it. But in many instances, just having another hurdle or a couple more hurdles in the way of somebody doing something is enough for them to just not do it. I mean, think about how many times you as a person have probably really, really wanted a good slice of pizza from a pizza place, but it's just outside the delivery zone, or your house is just outside their delivery zone. You could drive 10 minutes and go pick up that pizza. But because you got to get off the couch, you're like, nah, I'm going to order it from a closer pizza shop. I've done that. Everybody I know has done that. And that's just for minor stuff. So now imagine That's just for minor, very overcomable obstacles. Now imagine if your obstacle is like you have to go find somebody who will sell you a gun with no markings on it, or on the black market, or you have to go steal someone's gun, or you have to go to like your friend's house and pretend to sneak it out. Like it becomes a significantly more annoying task to pick up a gun. And yes, some people are going to overcome that and they're going to still get a gun. But it's not about stopping everything, right? There's too many people in the world. There's too many people in the United States. Stupid stuff is going to happen. It's a statistic certainty that stupid stuff is going to happen, right? You can be the absolute perfect driver. You obey every traffic law. You're perfectly defensive. You always see you always see the other person doing something stupid first and you react to it. And eventually, just statistically speaking, you're going to be doing 70 miles on a highway and your tire is going to fall off and you'll crash, because once you lose the tire, you don't have control of the vehicle, right? Statistically speaking, that's going to happen. With enough miles driven, you will die in a car. That's just how it is, right? And the same thing is true when you get a bunch of people together. If you get a bunch of people together, even in a perfect system where everything is accounted for, stupid stuff is still going to happen, right? So our goal should be to prevent as many stupid things from happening as possible. And putting barriers in the way of people who probably shouldn't have a gun is a good way to prevent the person who probably shouldn't have a gun from doing something stupid with a gun. It's not going to work every time, but it'll work a lot of the time. And that's what we're aiming for here. And this guy was allowed to have a gun. So let's read about it a little bit more here. Years before Anthony Dwayne McRae killed 3 Michigan State University students and critically wounded 5 others, he was charged with carrying a concealed weapon, a felony count that would have prevented him from being able to buy a gun if he were convicted. That felony case never went to trial. Instead, a 2019 deal allowed McRae to plead guilty to a misdemeanor, possession of a loaded firearm in or upon a vehicle, the Ingham County Prosecutor's Office said Tuesday. Now, questions abound over whether the slaughter at Michigan State Monday evening could have been prevented. McRae purchased 2 guns in 2021 in Michigan. A law enforcement source said one was a Taurus pistol, and the other was a Hi-point 9mm pistol, according to the source. It's not clear whether either of those 2 weapons was used in the deadly rampage that spanned 2 parts of the campus in East Lansing. It's also unclear why McRae, a 43-year-old with no known ties to MSU, targeted the university. So he was allowed, even after having. Why do people kill people, bro? Because it's really easy to kill people. It's really easy to kill people, and it's really hard to fix yourself. That's why. It seems like a hard, like a cold thing to say, but that's the honest truth. People are fragile, and people are really good at coming up with ways to exert significantly more force and energy upon somebody than it takes to kill them. And that is much easier to do. It's much easier to overcome the force required to kill somebody than it is to overcome your own personal problems, your own personal demons, your own, mental hangups that you have that make you think the world is doing something to you, right? And you need to act out. Like, that's a hard thing for people to do. It's very easy to kill people. Do you think any murderers don't have a hard time doing a life sentence? How does that not scare them to kill someone? Because they're not right in the head. At the time that they kill somebody, they're not right in the head, right? It's not that they want to go to prison for life. It's that in that moment, that thought usually doesn't even cross their brain. Just like if you have a 50-50 chance of winning $1 million or having somebody slash your tires, you think they regret it? Some do. Some do. Some do it out of a crime of passion, right? And people who commit murder and crimes of passion aren't inherently bad people. Like, they don't sit, and by not inherently bad, I mean they don't sit there as a base state a murderer, right? They had to be They had to be goaded into it somehow. They had to get their emotions up real red hot, and then they just lose it and do something unspeakable, right? That act is horrifying, but when they're just calm and resting there, they're not thinking about murdering people. It's as close to an accident as you could get in that instance without being an accident, which is why crimes of passions are punished different, right? Premeditated murder is that's when you're like, okay, you're. Do you think the government is getting good at mind control? The government doesn't need mind control. The government just needs to convince you to go to work and buy things. Like what does the government have a need for mind control for when you go to work every day and you buy stuff every day and you increase the overall prosperity and power of the government that you're taking part in? Government doesn't need to control you. You just have to be convinced to spend money. That's how it works. Any conspiracy theory you can think of about government control can immediately be debunked if you just try to figure out how they're getting you to spend money. Do you think we're basically slaves? No, I don't think we're basically slaves. I think the economy has become saturated with highly specialized jobs that feel really bad to do on a daily basis. But because the jobs are highly specialized, our lives in general are really easy. And I'm not saying emotionally, I'm not saying politically, I'm talking about just your ability to survive, to get enough food. For the vast majority of people in the world, it's not hard to survive. And that's very new in the world, right? And so we work our jobs that we don't like and feel like we're being slaves. Because if we didn't do that, all the things that we enjoy now wouldn't exist. You need that specialized labor force all the way down to build the world that we have now. But if we're being honest with ourselves, and this is where, getting past the post industrial age is going to be difficult, doing these sort of remedial jobs it doesn't feel good. It hurts inside. And so people feel bad about it. And we as a society have not figured out what the next step is yet. We haven't figured out how to maintain the remedial, highly specialized jobs that make our life possible while also not driving ourselves insane. There's been no balance found on that one yet. Some people get it. The famous people, the rich people, the owner class, the bourgeois, if you're a socialist or a communist, right? Those people have a balance. We should only have to work 20 to 25 hours a week, bro. I agree. I think we work too much. 40 plus is too much, bro. It is too much. It's at 40. The 40-hour work week was a massive step in the right direction when it happened, but it's an outdated concept now. We don't need people working 40 hours a week, right? The average US worker absolutely crushes production rates of past US workers, right? We produce as per capita like 10 times the value of a worker in 1930. We absolutely crush on economic production now. The United States is by far and away the most productive per capita country in the world. And yet, we're constantly having this fight with ourselves about younger generations being lazy and such and such and such. It makes no sense. And it's because we haven't made it to that next border yet, right? But yeah, I think getting back to the Michigan thing, right? I think that guys like this have a sort of like societal ache that causes them to like do these things without thinking about it, and we as a society need to be aware that this happens, right? We need to be aware and not give them the tools to act upon those irrational behaviors, those irrational thoughts. Rational is technically the wrong word to use there, but you know what I'm saying. Like, it's not kosher. It's not okay for you to like wake up and decide you're going to go shoot up a school. And we as a society need to realize that that's happening more and more. It's still really, really unlikely that you'll ever end up in a school shooting. Your children will end up in a school shooting. Like it happens still very rarely, but it is on the rise. And if it keeps rising, eventually it won't be rare. It will be an actual thing that you have to worry about on a day to day basis, like getting into a car accident, right? Car accidents are rare, but they're not so rare that you don't have to constantly be aware that you might get into a car accident when you're driving a car. School shootings have not made it to that point yet, but they are on the rise. And if we as a society don't get whatever is wrong fixed, it's going to happen more and more often. And one of the ways we can help is by not letting guys like this have a gun. That's a short-term solution, not a long-term fix, but we need a short-term fix now so we can fix everything else. And getting back to your 40-hour work week, giving people more leisure time and not forcing them to work 56, 60 hours a week to make ends meet would be a really good way to cut down on the societal angst that people have. Just more time to socialize and go touch grass, right? But we'll see. I don't think that's going to happen in my lifetime. At least I don't. Maybe 30-hour work week. It's being tried in a lot of European countries, and it seems to be going pretty well. So maybe the younger generation finally gets elected in the United States and starts to make some changes. But who knows? We'll see. But yeah, anytime a mass shooting happens, this is always my response: is like, taking away the guns from everybody will not solve the problem, right? You may cut down on mass shootings, but other problems are going to arise. So you need to, short term, get the guns out of the hands of the people that shouldn't have them, which is not a hard thing to do. Most of the vast majority of mass shooters have a history of doing something that would preclude them, in my mind, not legally, from having a gun. The only one I can think of that came literally out of nowhere, there was no warning that this guy was even remotely violently inclined, was the Las Vegas shooting. That dude was clean as a whistle. Clean as a whistle. And then he just rolled into a hotel and shot up a concert, like out of nowhere. They still don't know why this guy did it. He had no history. He had no background of violence. He wasn't behaving erratically. There were no social media posts. Nobody around him knew thought he was going to do this. It just come out of nowhere from that guy. But he's the only one. Every other school shooting had signs. Signs, things we could have acted upon to prevent it from happening, and we just didn't as a society. And then once you sort of get a handle on that, then you can worry about, like, do we work less? Do we do we pay for? Does everybody take mandatory mental health? Psychiatrist. Do you go talk to a shrink? Mandatory from the government. The government pays for it, and you have to go, kind of like jury duty, right? That's something that we do. There's all kinds of potential solutions that we just have to have the courage to play with a little bit. Do some trials, try something here, try something there. Maybe we do a UBI, maybe we don't. Maybe it's free college, maybe it's just make sure everybody has health care. Maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe it's, instead of having homeless people all over the place, just build them a house and just let them stay in it. We have a housing problem anyway. Let's build more houses for people who aren't homeless, to bring down the cost of housing, and then the projects that are supposed to be for disenfranchised and out of work people, move them in. They'd love to have a project house. There's plenty of things we could do, but that's basically it. Just like every time this comes up, mass shooting happens. It's awful. People react the wrong way. They say that they come up with the wrong solutions. They start worrying about the wrong stuff, and then it goes away, and then next week there'll be another one. It's just the way it is. I have my opinions on it. I think it's pretty obvious what we need to do, but I don't have a lot of faith that the solutions will get implemented anytime soon. But if we don't talk about it, it definitely won't happen. So that's what I'm here doing.